This is a challenge video where I will be explaining everything that I'm doing on this new stone I got from Evan. He calls it Brickite. I got this at the Coshocton Knapping. Okay, so just looking at it, it looks like it might be a little bit strange. I have napped some stuff similar to this, but it was petrified limestone, I believe. That's the closest thing that I've seen that looks this way. But you never know. Looks can be deceiving. So I'm just going to start. I bought some new boppers. These are solid copper heads. I'll weigh these and give you the weight in ounces. I bought a whole set from Flintknappingsupplies.com. Okay, I did that because I messed up my knuckle here using this billet, trying to spall some big chunks of chert. Okay, so right now my knuckle's sore, so I'm going to be using these. These are less harsh on my knuckle. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, it's more delicate than I thought. Yeah, this is not like the petrified limestone that I saw before, or that I napped before. It's very delicate. It doesn't look delicate, but it is delicate, which means it's probably very snap and half-ish. Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very delicate. Brittle. Where did that come from? I don't even know where that came from. How that broke off. All right, there it is. So I hit it down here, trying to just get a small flake, but it removed quite a bit. So you can see where I hit right there. Now I'm just experimenting with it so far. Let's get the lighting good. Yep, the light's on. Okay, so this will be interesting. I will narrate as much as I can and try to explain what I understand to be the case on each step that I take. But just fair warning, I don't understand everything. And I don't know everything about the physics of napping. What I'm doing is I'm going to be shaping this into a rough biface at first, taking hits from what I consider to be easy areas, or easy hits to accomplish, relatively speaking. My first strategy is always to thin the ends first. The only higher priority is taking out a curve if there's a curve, let's say in a large flake. This one was not curved, so I'm just hitting what I think is good areas, so to speak, to get it roughed out into a bifacial shape before I do any thinning. I don't consider this thinning. At this stage, I consider this to be shaping, because thinning is a different mindset. I don't feel like I'm thinning it right now. I feel like I'm just shaping it. Thinning involves very careful striking, because there's not much range of possibilities when it gets thin, like there's not much choice in where you direct the force. It has to be directed very narrowly to get the flakes in just the right spot, so you're not going to either create a step fracture or a scoop out or some other mistake. In the early stages like this, mistakes can be made. Without too much of an obstacle to further progress, because they can be removed more easily than trying to remove the mistakes when it's already thin. Which means I can afford to make mistakes. So I keep that in mind. If I'm in a hurry, I will try to rush it at this stage rather than the finishing stage. As an example of how I can take advantage of the initial stage. I can go faster, and maybe I want to rough out a bunch of bifaces quickly. I can do that at this stage. Okay, so I already removed what I consider to be the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. Now it's a matter of very carefully trying to remove the remaining obstacles. So in preparation for that, I make sure that I remove all the dull edges. And I like to do it all at once, so I don't have to keep putting this down, picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, to do individual spots to strike. I like to go over the whole thing. It does add up as far as time. If you do a lot of napping. If you don't do much napping, then it doesn't matter too much. But I do a lot of napping, so these little time-saving maneuvers are a habit that I got into, so I don't spend too much time making unnecessary movements, or movements that can be shortened in time by doing them all at once. So I grind it all at once, and then I nap around the whole thing all at once while I'm in that mode of trying to remove the obstacles. And yeah, I just picked the Abrader up again, but for this particular area I didn't see a good immediate opportunity, so now I'm creating an opportunity right there. I struck down this way, and then I'm going to strike in this way. Now again, this material is very brittle. It's not bad as far as flakeability. It flakes very easily. But it's a two-edged sword when that happens. There's advantages and disadvantages to something that flakes easily. The main disadvantage is that it can snap in half unexpectedly. If you want to know why I take off certain flakes, the easiest thing for me to say is just look at the result. That most of the time that'll tell you why I took the flake off, because I just wanted to remove material from that area. Alright, because it's part of the shaping process. I don't know what I'm going to make yet, but my default shape is a teardrop. So I make a teardrop shape biface first. Alright, so I thin down the ends. And many times I'll tell you in my previous videos that I'll work on the whole piece and strike off things, strike off flakes or little bumps or whatever, or trim, Yeah, it's all the removal of flakes, but there's different angles and stuff. To just remove a small flake like that, it's just a brush. It's not really what I consider a flake like that. There's a different technique for removing each type of flake. And sometimes I just don't even consider it flaking when I'm doing this trimming. I consider it flaking when I drive in further. But we don't divide flint knapping into these little distinctions. You probably should, especially for beginners. Anyways, all this is being done just so I can attack this particular obstacle. Trimming, shaping, thinning the ends down, getting used to the material by removing flakes from these other areas, so I can get used to the material, because that's important when I'm going to be striking into this obstacle. This obstacle is not going to be easy to remove. Both in terms of, I'm not sure exactly where to hit, I'm not sure how it's going to react, and I'm not sure if it's actually going to snap in half or not, because I'm going to be using a lot of force. But flint knapping is a skill of risk management. So I'm decreasing my risk of snapping it in half by reducing the thickness of the ends and making sure that the edges don't exhibit any cracks that could open up and go across the piece. Because a crack not only results from the direct hit or the site of the direct hit, it can also result from other cracks in other areas of the biface, okay, due to the shock on the workpiece and the bending stresses and the rotating stresses. It can open up cracks in other areas. You got to be aware of not only cracks at the point of impact, but cracks elsewhere. And the cracks at point of impact can be pre-existing or generated by your tool. Okay. All right, so I snuck up on it without hitting it with the first strike on purpose, because the first strikes are usually not as accurate as strikes where you creep up on it. In my case, you might be able to be more accurate on the first strike, and you'll mess up the accuracy if you swing a little bit first and then hit. Do whatever is most accurate for you. Okay, so that worked very well. It's not perfect because I was aiming toward this greatest amount of mass, but the flake decided it wanted to go that way instead of this way. Usually because it takes the path of least resistance. So the least resistance for the flake was to go this way instead of that way. That's what I'm assuming. Again, I don't know the physics clearly or accurately. I don't have a scientific instrumentation in my brain. I just have my experience. All right. So that worked out well. Now it's a matter of thinning now. So the main obstacles have been removed. Now it's the secondary stage. So this is what I call the first stage. So what I do a lot of times, I take a pause because the mindset is now changing. It's no longer going after low-hanging fruit and removing the major obstacles and major defects and major material, I don't know, I was going to say imperfections, but the lumps and everything in the beginning stages are not imperfections. They're just unnecessary for the final piece, right? So you eliminate those. I eliminated those. Now I got the teardrop basic shape. It's the next stage. And the mindset is different. Okay. And you can put this away and come back to it, and it's not going to harm your mojo, your groove, or whatever, because this is a transition point. It's best to take breaks during the transition points, because it's, like I said, it's not going to interrupt what you were doing previously, the mindset you had previously. Okay, this is a different mindset. I want to emphasize that because it's not really emphasized in other napping videos, and it is very, very important. Okay. Forgive me for the loud noises on the video from the Abrader. I did buy some files to make it more quiet, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to start using these files mainly because they're more quiet than that other Abrader. I bought these specifically, hopefully, to be more aggressive, yet quieter than the Abrader. Okay. So what do I think this material is? I don't know. It almost feels like a fine-grained basalt. But more delicate than a fine-grained basalt. I don't think this is a volcanic type of stone. The fine-grained basalt is volcanic in origin. But this I don't think it is. All right. I'm going to start with the indirect percussion. On this stage, and if I feel the need to use the bopper, I can. If I want to remove a large flake that I might not be able to remove with the indirect flaker. But other than that, it's going to be indirect percussion from here on in until the final sharpening stage. It's better to use the Abrader on the copper tip rather than the file for the indirect percussion flakers, because there's rock usually embedded in the tip of the copper, or within the copper at the tip. It'll dull your file quickly, but it does less damage to your Abrader than it does to the file. On little pressure flakers, or the little tips on pressure flakers, the damage to the file isn't as intense. Let's see. Okay. So now I've got to figure out or get used to how this reacts to the indirect percussion flaker. So I'm just going to take some easy, what I consider easy peasy flakes here and there. Nothing major to start out with. You know, I don't start out brand new with a flaker on unfamiliar material trying to tackle an extremely difficult obstacle, because there's too many unknowns. I want to get used to how the indirect percussion flaker is actually flaking. Okay? And it seems to be working well. The edges are not crushing all that much. They're crushing a little bit. The flakes are tending to break up toward the end, which is typical of a brittle material. I expected that, so I'm not taking really long flakes. But I will take some long flakes in a little while here, after I get everything nice and smooth. I want a good flake path for the longer flakes. I can't expect a lot of success if I try for a long flake when it's not smooth. The smoothness of the surface contributes to the flake travel. If there's a lot of obstacles, bumps, dips, and different inconsistencies or inclusions, it interferes with the flake travel. The more or the longer the flake, the more chance it's going to have dips, imperfections, inconsistencies, and other obstacles. So I've got to look and see, first off, is it smooth enough? Is it convex enough for a long flake? And then after that, it's all the other little obstacles like inclusions and slight waves and ripples. Okay. So what I'm doing is, I should have been using something more quiet. What I'm doing is looking for opportunities. I'm an opportunistic flint napper. I don't create striking areas for flakes that I intend to send into these areas where I want flakes. I just remove the weak areas and allow the resulting contours to show me where there's good opportunities. Yeah, after I remove the thin areas, only the strong areas are left, and some of those appear to be good opportunities. Are they perfect? Nope. Can I make them more perfect? Yes. Why don't I? Because the longer I take to make a point, the less and less interested I am in actually napping it. I want to finish strong. I don't want to finish in a state of mind where I'm already burnt out on that particular piece because I've been taking too long to shape it in the beginning stages. Okay? So I will take risks that maybe I shouldn't, but I'll take them because it's better for me to take the risks and finish strong than to not take risks and finish weakly, finish in a weak state of mind, and then end up breaking it at the end. I'd rather break it now than breaking it at the very end. Okay. So this is going to be a long flake, hopefully. And almost. Now with this type of flake, you can put it back after cleaning off the surface and strike it again if it didn't go as far as you wanted. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't think it continues. No, it's an abrupt stop. I'm not sure why it broke there, but it doesn't matter because I can try again. As long as the flake is intact, I can try again and force it to continue. Okay? But I got to make sure it's making solid contact, so when you can't see the original break, you're there. You've refitted the flake well. If you see any gaps or cracks, you have not refitted the flake well. It's got to be butted up against the step fracture extremely well to impart all the force that's possible to impart. Okay? And I am going to hold the flake and pull it against the step fracture slightly. I will slightly pull in this case. I usually don't pull on flakes, but in this case I need to pull it to keep it in place. I'm not pulling it to help drive the flake. I'm pulling it to keep it in place. Okay. So I think that worked. Yes, it did. It did force it to continue, and it looks good. So next, same thing. I'm looking for areas that are thick, that are presenting an opportunity for me to flake. Like I can do this without modifying the edge other than abrading it. Let's try this ridge here. Well, that didn't work. I aimed directly down the ridge, but again, the flake went this way instead of traveling that way. Is that going to be a common theme? It might be. Let's see. I'm going to hit where I should not hit, right here above it. Hit more downward instead of inward. See if I can scoop that out. It's not an ideal situation, but I might be able to scoop that out. Yep. So you see, it's scooped quite a bit. I did that on purpose. Sometimes I do that by mistake, but this time I scooped it on purpose to get that flake to dive under the obstacle. Let's see if I can put that back. Yes, no. Up here somewhere. Is it that? I suppose that's it. Some broke off the backside, but yeah. And it hit above center line. When I do that, I don't want to hit inward too much, so I hit downward. This angle is totally different from the angle that I used earlier. It's a more downward angle. And when I said scoop it out, what I did was I put the flaker high up on the edge, or higher than normal. That usually scoops out more at the beginning stages of the flake removal. So that's what I meant by scooping it. Why do I want to scoop it? Because I want to make sure I get under that area that had a concavity. It had like a little dip. So I have to get under that dip. And it worked. Now it doesn't work with all materials. That particular type of tactic doesn't work with all materials. This is a very brittle, very easy to flake material, so it will work. But if it's a hard, very difficult to knap material, trying that tactic doesn't always work. What happens with a very difficult material is that it will go in, scoop it out, but since the rock is so strong, the path of least resistance is not to continue, but to pop out right away, or step fracture. Okay, so that type of maneuver will work on a delicate material like obsidian or this kind of stuff, or a heat treat. But it cannot be used on everything. You can try it on other stuff, and if you're lucky, it might work. But then again, you got to assess the risks. Can you live with the step fracture that would result in case it doesn't work? If you can live with it and remove the step fracture some other way, or in the future with some way, then it's fine. But if you cannot live with that mistake, don't try it on a hard material. So this material is very brittle, very steppy. I don't anticipate too much problem with it as long as I keep it thick. The problems that I foresee with this is going to be when I start getting it thin. Like all materials, with very few exceptions, there are some exceptions. With all materials, it becomes a lot more difficult to produce smooth flake removals as it gets thinner. Why? Because the strength of the flake will vary with different materials, and the weaker the material and the thinner the flake, the sooner it will crack and break before it'll continue. Okay, these are going to be thin flakes. I'm looking at this. I can probably get thin flakes like this that won't break and create step fractures, but if they get any thinner than this, they probably will break and create a step fracture. Okay, because a lot of these did break and they weren't complete. All right, so I'm going to I'm going to continue this on the next segment. Okay.